Imagine this. A huge, dense forest. So thick, so rugged, that military leaders basically write it off. Impassable for a big attack, they think. Now, what if that exact forest becomes the key route, like a highway, for one of the fastest, most stunning military wins in history?
It's quite a thought, isn't it? A massive strategic blind spot. And it didn't just decide one battle, it fundamentally changed the whole course of the war in weeks.
Absolutely. So today we're doing a deep dive into the Battle of France, 1940, and we're really zeroing in on that German Ardennes offensive, the thing nobody saw coming.
Right.
We want to unpack how the Germans pulled off this incredibly bold plan, how they used that assumption, the idea that the Ardennes was impassable against the Allies, and ultimately how it led to France falling so quickly.
Okay, so let's set the scene a bit. It's May 1940. Germany had already rolled into Poland back in September 39.
Yep.
That brought France and Britain into the war. But then things went quiet for a while.
Yeah.
The Phoney War, everyone called it.
Right, this strange calm before the storm. And the main Allied plan, certainly for the French, was all about the Maginot Line.
That famous line of fortresses,
Yeah.
huge concrete bunkers, guns, state-of-the-art, really.
And the idea wasn't just defense, was it? It was designed to channel any German attack northwards.
Exactly. Force them into Belgium. The thinking was the best French and British troops would meet them there, keep the fighting away from France itself, sort of like World War I again, in a way.
And the really critical part here, the bit that's just amazing in hindsight, is how utterly convinced the French commanders were, people like Pétain, Gangla,
Press.
that the Ardennes forest area was safe, basically off limits for a major invasion.
Yeah, they looked at the terrain, the thick woods, the hills, the Meuse River cutting through it, and thought, no way, even if they try it, we'll have tons of warning.
They even did war games in 1938 that seemed to back this up, right?
They did. Their own simulations concluded that any force trying to push through the Ardennes would get bogged down, move too slowly. It reinforced their belief. They figured they'd have plenty of time to shift troops if needed.
So they felt secure? Complacent, maybe?
Yeah.
Based on the terrain and their own studies?
It seems so. A mix of past experience, doctrine, this idea of methodical battle where everything was planned, deliberate. They just couldn't really conceive of the kind of rapid mechanized thrust the Germans were about to unleash. It wasn't in their playbook.
And that mistake, that assumption, is exactly what Germany exploited with their daring gamble, the Ardennes offensive.
But it wasn't the first plan the Germans had, the original concept for Fall Gelb, case yellow.
That was the code name.
Yes, Fall Gelb. The initial plan, drafted by Colonel General Halder at Army High Command, OKH, was actually much more, well, predictable.
How so?
It was basically a big frontal attack through central Belgium. More conventional, kind of like a replay of the old Schlieffen Plan ideas, but less ambitious.
And Hitler, was he happy with that?
Not really. He wanted something more decisive, something like the Blitzkrieg that had worked so well in Poland, a fast, deep armored punch.
But his generals were hesitant.
Very much so. Halder and others argued that France wasn't Poland. They said the French army was a first-rate military, and those kinds of shock tactics wouldn't work against them. Too risky.
But then there were delays, weren't there? Hitler wanted to go in late 39.
He did. He pushed for October, November 39, but the army wasn't ready, the weather was bad. They persuaded him to postpone, and that delay turned out to be crucial.
Because it gave time for a different idea to emerge.
Exactly. This pause allowed for a much bolder, more radical plan to gain traction. General von Rundstedt, who commanded Army Group A, and especially his chief of staff, Erich von Manstein, they felt Halder's plan just lacked punch.
They wanted something with more strategic knockout potential.
Precisely. They weren't just aiming to push the Allies back. They wanted to encircle and destroy them. And then, in talks, comes Heinz Guderian.
The tank guy.
The tank visionary. Yeah. Guderian suggested something really out there. He said, look, let's mass most of our tanks, the Panzerwaffe, down near Sedan.
Right at the edge of the Ardennes?
Punch through the weakest point there, and then just drive. Drive flat out for the English Channel.
Wow. And the key part?
The key part was, don't wait for the infantry. Let the tanks run wild, basically. Aim for total strategic collapse, not a slow, grinding cauldron battle.
A cauldron battle. That's where you surround the enemy and just wear them down.
Yeah, a slow, costly process. Guderian wanted speed, shock, paralysis, cut off the main Allied armies in Belgium before they even knew what hit them.
But letting tanks operate so far ahead of infantry, That must have sounded crazy to the traditionalists.
It did. Hugely risky. The OKH, the High Command, they hated it initially. Manstein had to submit his memos outlining this plan like 6 times.
6 times.
Yeah, and each one got rejected. They just couldn't stomach the risk of the tanks being cut off and destroyed. Bureaucratic inertia, too, probably.
So what changed their minds? What made this radical gamble suddenly seem viable?
A plane crash, strangely enough. The Mechelin incident, January 10th, 1940.
One-handed.
A German officer carrying plans for the original invasion, the one through central Belgium, crash-landed in Belgium.
Oh, wow. So the Allies got the plans.
They did. Now, Allied intelligence actually doubted if they were real, thought it might be a plant, but the Germans assumed the Allies knew. They figured their main plan was blown.
So that forced their hand. They needed a new plan.
It certainly created the opening. Hitler himself had apparently been thinking along similar lines, maybe an attack near Sedan. When he was finally shown Manstein's detailed plan in February 1940, he apparently jumped at it. He saw the potential for a truly decisive victory.
And Halder, the guy who wrote the first plan.
He did a complete U-turn. Astonishing, really. He came around to supporting the Manstein plan, although he was still nervous about the tanks running too far ahead on their own.
But even with Hitler's backing, there were still doubts within the German military.
Oh, absolutely. Loads of generals thought concentrating so much force, especially armor, through the Ardennes was madness. Logistical nightmare, they said. What about resupply? What if the French counterattacked the flanks of this narrow push?
It sounds incredibly vulnerable on paper.
It was. But Halder, now converted, pushed it through. He argued it was the only way to get a decisive win. And Hitler was bullish. He predicted the whole campaign would be over in 6 weeks. He was apparently really excited by the novelty, things like using gliders to take out key Belgian forts like Audennes.
So the die is cast May 10th, 1940. Fall Gelb, the revised version, kicks off.
That's right. Army Group A, under Rundstedt, with Panzer Group Kleist, which included Guderian's corps, starts pouring into the Ardennes.
What did they encounter initially? Did the French and Belgians put up a fight in the forest?
They did try. Belgian motorized troops, French light cavalry divisions like the 1st Chasseurs Ardennes, the 5E DLC, they tried delaying actions, blocking roads. But the Belgian roadblocks weren't always defended effectively. And the French just didn't have enough anti-tank guns in the right places to stop the sheer volume of German armor coming through.
Speaking of volume, you mentioned logistics. Was it chaos trying to get all those vehicles through those narrow forest roads?
Absolute chaos. It's an amazing detail. Panzer Group Kleist alone had something like 41,000 vehicles.
41,000.
Yeah. Tanks, trucks, motorcycles, everything. It created traffic jams stretching back 250 kilometers, a massive slow-moving target.
That seems like a huge vulnerability.
Yeah.
If the Allies had realized.
Exactly. If Allied air power had hit those columns hard, it could have stopped the offensive dead in its tracks. It was one of Germany's moments of outrageous good luck, as some historians call it.
But the Allies didn't hit them. Why not? Did they not see them?
Oh, they saw them. French reconnaissance spotted the columns by May 10th, 11th, but the reports were often dismissed, seen as maybe a secondary attack, a feint, not the main thrust.
Still stuck on the idea that the real attack had to be through Belgium.
Pretty much. Gemelin, the French commander-in-chief, ordered troop movements by rail, slowly, mostly at night. He just didn't grasp the speed, the urgency. He still trusted the Ardennes would hold them up, that impenetrability mindset again.
Incredible. So the Germans pushed through the traffic jams and the scattered resistance.
And by May 12th, they're at the Meuse River, aiming for crossings at Sedan, Montfermeil, and Dinant. Sedan is the really key one.
Okay, Sedan. What was the French defense like there? Were they ready?
On paper, it looked okay. The Meuse line there was deep, about 6 kilometers, over 100 pillboxes manned by fortress troops and the 55th Infantry Division.
Fine.
But the 55th was a Grade B division. Reservists, less training, maybe lower morale, older equipment. And crucially, they were about to face something entirely...
Not just tanks.
No. Air power. Instead of a long artillery bombardment, the Germans unleashed the Luftwaffe. Thousands of sorties, constant dive bombing attacks with those screaming Stukas. It was the heaviest air attack the world had ever seen up to that point.
Psychological warfare as much as physical destruction.
Totally. And it broke the 55th Division. Not necessarily the bombs themselves killing everyone, but the terror, the noise, the relentless pressure. Rumors started spreading. The tanks are already across. They're behind us.
Even before they were.
Yes. It caused what's known as the Panic of Bolson. Troops just started fleeing, abandoning positions. Before Guderian's tanks had even properly crossed the Meuse in force, a huge gap had opened up in the French line. purely through air power and fear.
So the door was wide open.
And Guderian didn't hesitate. His bosses, Kleist, even Hitler were sending orders. Consolidate the bridgehead, wait for infantry. Standard procedure.
But Guderian ignored them.
He basically did. He called it a reconnaissance in force, but he just kept pushing west with his 1st and 2nd Panzer divisions, straight towards the Channel, just like the plan said. No waiting.
And Rommel was doing something similar nearby.
Oh, Rommel with his 7th Panzer, the Ghost Division. He was even more audacious, maybe. Advanced nearly 50 kilometers in 24 hours at one point, completely outran his own communications. Nobody knew where he was half the time, just smashed through surprised French units, claimed thousands of prisoners with tiny losses. The speed was just bewildering for the French.
So the French front just collapsed.
Pretty much. The French Ninth Army basically disintegrated. Other divisions were caught off balance, bypassed, destroyed, piecemeal. Their whole system, their doctrine of methodical battle, just couldn't react fast enough to this Blitzkrieg style.
It's amazing that even Hitler got nervous about this success.
Yeah, Halder's diary mentions Hitler being frightened by his own success, ranting that the panzers were going too fast, too far ahead, risking everything. We are on the way to ruin the whole campaign, he supposedly said.
It shows how much of a knife edge this whole operation was on. An incredible gamble paying off, but terrifying even for its architects.
The shock in Paris must have been immense.
Utter disbelief, turning to panic. May 15th, the French Prime Minister, Paul Reynaud, makes that famous phone call to Churchill. Basically says, we're beaten. We've lost the battle.
Churchill flew straight to Paris, didn't he?
He did the next day, and found chaos. Government officials burning documents in anticipation of the Germans arriving.
And that famous exchange with Gamelin?
Yes. Churchill asks, Où est la masse de manœuvre? Where's the strategic reserve? You know, the forces that could counterattack, the ones that saved Paris in 1914.
And Gamelin's reply?
Aucun. None. Or maybe he said there was no longer any. Either way, the meaning was devastatingly clear. There was nothing left in reserve to stop the panzers. The game was basically up at that point, strategically.
Did the Allies try any counterattacks? With their own tanks?
They did. But it was mostly too little, too late, and poorly coordinated. The French actually had a lot of tanks, and some, like the Char B-1, were individually better than many German tanks.
So what was the problem?
They were scattered, spread out thinly to support infantry units, following that old doctrine. They weren't concentrated into powerful armored divisions like the Germans, so they couldn't deliver that knockout punch.
Any notable attempts?
Charles de Gaulle, commanding the new 4th Armored Division, did launch some local attacks, like near Maucournet. He actually surprised the Germans, caused some delays, showed what French armor could do if concentrated. But he lacked infantry support and, crucially, air cover. The Luftwaffe's dive bombers just hammered his formations whenever they tried to move, breaking up the attacks. So the German drive continues.
Relentlessly. By May 20th, Guderian's tanks reached the Channel coast near Abbeville,
cutting off the main Allied armies in Belgium and northern France.
Exactly. The British Expeditionary Force, the French First Army, the 7th, the 9th, the Belgians, all trapped in a huge pocket with their backs to the sea.
Which leads us to Dunkirk, Operation Dynamo.
Right. The British commander, Lord Gort, saw the writing on the wall. He lost faith that the French Wagon Plan, a proposed pincer movement to cut off the German spearhead, could possibly work. He started thinking about saving his men.
And then came the famous halt order.
Yes, this incredibly controversial decision from the German side. Kleist, Klug, Rundstedt, even Hitler approved it. They ordered the panzer divisions to stop just short of Dunkirk.
Why? Why would they stop when the prize was right there?
Historians still debate it intensely. Was it fear of tanks getting bogged down in the marshy ground? Was it Goering promising the Luftwaffe could finish the job from the air? Was it Hitler wanting to let the British escape, hoping for peace? Or just exhaustion and caution after the rapid advance? Probably mixed factors.
But the result was crucial.
Absolutely crucial. It gave the Allies a window, maybe 3 or 4 days, to organize the defense and start the evacuation. Many argue that halt orders saved the BEF.
And there were other factors helping the evacuation too, like Calais.
Yes, the defense of Calais was vital. British and French troops there held out against fierce attacks, including from the 10th Panzer Division, for 4 critical days. It tied down German forces that could otherwise have been attacking Dunkirk sooner.
And Lille.
The French First Army fought a brilliant delaying action around Lille, drawing off even more German divisions. It was a sacrificial fight, really, allowing more time for the evacuation from the beaches.
So Dynamo happens, the miracle of Dunkirk.
From May 26th to June 4th, An incredible feat of improvisation. Naval ships, civilian boats, the famous little ships pulling soldiers off the beaches under constant air attack.
How many got away?
Around 338,000 Allied soldiers, about 200,000 British, and maybe 140,000 French, a huge number, saving the core of the British Army. But all their heavy equipment was left behind, and the Luftwaffe still inflicted heavy losses on ships and planes.
So Dunkirk saved the men, but France was still facing disaster.
Completely. After Dunkirk, the Germans launched the second phase, Fall Red, the battle for the rest of France.
What was the situation then?
Grim. The remaining French forces, maybe 60-odd divisions, plus the British 51st Highland Division, which hadn't been evacuated, were facing over 140 German divisions, and the Germans had total air supremacy.
Did the French fight on? Did they change tactics?
They did fight on and actually showed improved tactics in some areas. More defense in depth, setting up fortified strong points, hedgehogs in towns and villages, trying local counterattacks. Morale wasn't universally broken.
But it wasn't enough.
No. The sheer weight of numbers, the German mobility, and especially the Luftwaffe just crushing any attempts to concentrate forces or artillery. It was overwhelming.
Paris fell.
Declared an open city to avoid destruction, fell on June 14th. The Maginot Line, now completely outflanked from the rear, held out in places with incredible bravery, some forts resisting until July, long after the armistice. But it was futile.
Italy jumped in.
Mussolini declared war on June 10th, hoping to grab some spoils. Their attack in the Alps had very little impact, though.
So the end came with the armistice.
Yes. The French government, now led by Marshal Pétain, the hero of Verdun in World War I, requested an armistice. It was signed on June 22nd.
And Hitler insisted on signing it in that railway carriage.
The same one where Germany signed the armistice ending World War I in 1918 in the forest of Compiègne. A very deliberate, symbolic act of humiliation and revenge for Germany.
So looking back at this whole whirlwind campaign, why? Why were the Allies, especially the French, with their large army and fortifications, caught so completely off guard?
Well, we touched on it, but intelligence failure is a huge part of it.
They had warnings, right?
They did. From Switzerland, from Belgium, their own air reconnaissance saw the buildup in the Ardennes. But the analysis failed. The reports weren't believed, or they were misinterpreted, filtered through that fixed idea that the main attack must come through Belgium. They dismissed the Ardennes buildup as a diversion, a feint, even a German spoof. It wasn't a lack of data, it was a failure to connect the dots and believe the unbelievable.
Compounded by that rigid doctrine.
Exactly. That belief in methodical battle, in prepared defensive lines. They simply couldn't react quickly or flexibly enough. Their command structure was too slow, too cumbersome compared to the German system, which allowed for more initiative at lower levels, guys like Guderian and Rommel making decisions on the fly.
Ernest May called it a triumph of intellect for the Germans.
He did in his book Strange Victory, arguing it wasn't just about better tanks or planes, but better thinking. Understanding the enemy's mindset, their assumptions, and then deliberately exploiting them with methodical opportunism. Planning for chaos, almost.
But luck played a role, too.
Oh, definitely. German commanders admitted it themselves. That traffic jam in the Ardennes, if Allied bombers had hit it properly. Guderian crossing the Meuse against orders. What if the French counterattack had been stronger just then? Rommel vanishing off the map. What if he'd run into serious trouble? So many moments could have turned disaster into failure for the Germans. They had, as we said, some outrageous good luck.
The consequences were obviously enormous. France occupied, Vichy France set up, de Gaulle leading the Free French from London.
Britain suddenly standing alone, worried sick about the French fleet falling into German hands, leading to that tragic attack at Mers el-Kabir. Britain becoming hugely reliant on U.S. support, the Lend-Lease Act eventually.
And the military lessons learned.
Huge. The Battle of France, and the Ardennes Plan in particular, became the textbook example of Blitzkrieg. It showed the devastating power of concentrated armor, closely supported by air power, used for deep penetration and encirclement. It set the standard for mobile warfare for the rest of WWII, influencing tactics on all sides.
So to wrap up, the German Ardennes offensive, it was this audacious, high-risk plan.
Born out of dissatisfaction with conventional ideas, pushed by Manstein, Guderian, embraced by Hitler.
And it completely shattered Allied assumptions about the terrain, about how modern war would be fought, leading to the unbelievably swift fall of France.
Despite the Allies having, in some areas, numerical or even qualitative advantages initially.
Because they were blinded, really, by their own doctrine, by failing to properly read the intelligence picture. They just couldn't adapt to the speed and sheer audacity of the German attack through a place they thought was safe.
A failure of imagination, perhaps, as much as military failure.
Which leaves us with a final thought for you to consider. What if? What if that massive traffic jam in the Ardennes had been hammered by Allied planes? What if Gamlin had believed the reconnaissance reports and rushed reserves to Sedan just a day or two earlier? Or what if that halt order at Dunkirk had never been given?
How different might the next few months or even the whole war have looked? It's a stark reminder, isn't it? How one calculated gamble, one strategic blind spot, one moment of hesitation or decision can utterly change the course of history.